What have you been making of developments since this dreadful murder? I mean, it is a massive moment for America, isn't it, at the very least?
It is, Sheila, because it's part of a pattern and it's part of a trend. America is no stranger to political violence. It's been embedded since the foundation of the Republic, really, in the 18th century in different ways. I think what is starting to change is that previously when we've seen high-level assassinations, political violence and so on, generally speaking, they've been quite random, or they've been the result of lone actors who actually their politics are kind of hard to discern when one thinks of Lee Harvey Oswald, for example, or some of the great assassinations in that way. What we've seen more and more, and obviously we still don't know, and we should keep saying we can't know that this is the case here with Charlie Kirk, because we may know in the next couple of minutes or so. But we have certainly seen political violence become more and more legitimised, almost as a tool of political action.
A part of the narrative.
A part of the narrative, but also part of political action itself, that this is partly how you get things done. And the truth is, we've seen a lot of people entirely, completely understandably, furious and angry that this talismanic figure on the right of American politics has been mowed down in the prime of his life, and that is reprehensible, abhorrent in every single way.
Absolutely.
The truth is, however, and this cuts in both ways, the truth is many of those same people have not expressed nearly the same sort of outrage and the same sort of horror when political acts have taken place, murderous acts, against people on the left. The best example I can think of this, Sheila, is remember when Paul Pelosi, the husband of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, was attacked by a violent maniac.
Hammer-wielding maniac
in their home in San Francisco, and with, continuing injuries to this day as a result, with him going in saying, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" How did Donald Trump Jr. respond to that? He responded to it by putting a picture on social media of a hammer, some underpants, saying, "I've got my Paul Pelosi Halloween outfit sorted," right? This is the legitimization of violence into the bloodstream of American politics. So what needs to happen, although I fear will not happen, is a general pulling back from the precipice, and this affects our own politics in this country as well, from the legitimization of violence as a means of politics. But the truth is that I think it's unlikely to happen. And let's be honest, when we're talking about the legitimization of violence, what happened on January the 6th? January the 6th was one of the worst pieces of insurrection and violence in American politics since the Civil War ended in 1865. Openly encouraged by the outgoing president. And when he came back, he decided to pardon all of them, which sent a subliminal message that violence works and is okay.
Also, in the initial statement he gave on the night that Charlie Kirk, well, it was nighttime our time, wasn't it, when Charlie Kirk was murdered, I thought large parts of it were pitch perfect. And then towards the end, said this yesterday, towards the end, Donald Trump talked about hateful language directed at others has contributed to this. And I thought, but that's your USP.
Indeed so. And again, I just want to keep saying this because I can totally understand people's anger and frustration. Charlie Kirk's murder is abhorrent and reprehensible, and nothing can justify it.
No.
The truth is, however, that American politics, the temperature has been rising and rising and rising. And let's be honest, part of that, a lot of that, has come at Donald Trump's hand. Some of these people, remember, even Charlie Kirk himself had referred to left-wingers as lunatics, or saying, invoked kind of deeply evocative kind of imagery and language. The truth is, sometimes, I certainly wouldn't necessarily include Kirk in this, who I actually think, parts of what he was doing were very admirable. He was going out there trying to say what he believed, which is an admirable thing.
He recreated a kind of old-fashioned public space for debate, didn't he?
Talking to people who disagree with him. That is deeply admirable. It's something we do on this station every single day of the week. But the truth is that there are some on the radical right of the American politics at the heart of the MAGA movement who are responding to this, and I would put it like this. They're like arsonists complaining about the temperature of the building. They have added fuel to the fire, fuel to the fire, fuel to the fire, and are now looking around and finding that the situation they're in is hot. It needs to cool down in every direction.
And my guest a few moments ago, who's written about Charlie Kirk's movement and the right, the religious right, she was saying, in relation to Donald Trump, he's something of a son figure even, because of the closeness of the two families. Do you think that will play out over the next few days? into things like Charlie Kirk lying in state. I mean, we can't say for sure because it's the family's wishes, but potentially see him lying in state in the Capitol, potentially see a sort of quasi-state funeral for him?
Well, I think that there is no doubt that Kirk, as I say, is a central figure to the MAGA movement. And you could see in the president's reaction that he was deeply moved, deeply angry, completely understandable. But he's also the president. And he also needs to know that just because Charlie Kirk was central to the MAGA movement, he's not necessarily central to the American state and cannot be treated as such. And when I say, Sheila, about kind of the reaction to this and the sort of fuel on the fire, I mean, let's just look at some of the reaction. I noticed yesterday, these are all from accounts, MAGA accounts, big following, blue ticks. Liberals can never be allowed to run this country again. How do you coexist with people that want to murder you? These are all separate things. If you vote Democrat at this point, you're a demonic, evil person. I will support whatever saves our country. Trump has a blank check as far as I'm concerned. Another, I want vengeance. I know it's wrong. I wish I was just a better person. I'm just not. Even Charlie Kirk's own organisation, Turning Point, tweeted, "Look back in anger." Now, what is this supposed to mean? My point is also this, which is that, we have this discussion on this station all the time. What are the limits of free speech? Now, I'm someone who believes, actually, I'm very passionate about free speech. I actually think the limits on free speech should be limited, very limited. But I also do believe, and have always believed, that words can affect behaviour and can affect action. Many of these same people who are now saying that the left has caused Charlie Kirk's death by calling him far-right or a fascist or whatever it happens to be are the same people who repeatedly tell us that there should be no limits on free speech, that words cannot hurt people. I know in terms of the reaction of some in Britain, for example, who have been, again, slamming people for saying that, the words that have been used have contributed to Kirk's death. We can't know that yet, but, it's a perfectly legitimate theory to put across. Some of those are the same people who've been telling us for weeks and weeks and weeks that Lucy Connolly did nothing wrong whatsoever, despite the fact that she quite literally incited with her words.
Go and set fire to a building full of people.
So, Sheila, my view is it's got to be one or the other. Either we've got to be more judicious, all of us, in the language that we use about others, or you've got to accept the potential consequences of that lack of judiciousness.
The line on words, the use of words and use of language, it is how they are wielded, isn't it?
Indeed.
It's how they're wielded. And that line can shift and can move, and humour can change it, and political knockabout
and we can all say things that we regret,
and
it's important to apologise.
But there's no question words can cause tremendous harm.
Of course so. And American politics is, and this is a problem that affects the left and the right. I don't think that one side is necessarily worse than the other on this. What I would say is that American politics, we see it in our own politics more and more, it's become such a politics of absolutes. Every election is now basically existential. One side believes that if the other wins, that their side is done, that democracy itself will be destroyed.
Yeah.
And when you have a politics which operates like that, it is no surprise that people start to turn to violence because they believe that is the only thing that will save us, because they believe the stakes are so high. And both sides have contributed to that sort of tone of apocalypse, and which has sort of come to dominate American politics. And
we've been talking, and there's still an appetite here from the calls to talk about it too, whether this particular brand of Christian conservatism, can translate in the UK to the degree, it translates a bit, but to the degree that it did in America. My sense is no, of our politics and our approach to our religions as well.
I think that's right. I think, look, one thing that we're seeing in the reaction to Charlie Kirk's death is something that has become more and more obvious for some time, which is that it is true to say that at an elite level, at a media level, at a political level, American and British politics are increasingly fused, particularly on the right. I think probably 10 years ago, something like this would not have generated the reaction that it has. But, we've had the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
It would have been over there.
It would have been over there. It would have been a story, but it wouldn't have been a front-page story. It wouldn't have been something that would be dominating the conversation. You certainly wouldn't have had someone like Boris Johnson responding to it. Ultimately, Charlie Kirk, as influential as he was a right-wing influencer. He wasn't a former president or vice president or secretary of state or anything like that.
Not an elected official.
Not an elected official.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is that fusion, particularly on the right, of what I would call the sort of Anglosphere kind of online world. But that is quite an elite thing. The truth is that actually most people out in the country, I expect many listeners, would not have heard of Charlie Kirk before what happened. And in terms of his politics as well, this is something else I've been sort of trying to say and getting a bit of pushback for, which is that Charlie Kirk, his positions, particularly in the British context, even in American context, are relatively extreme. What I mean by that is that most of what he believed is not supported
in any mainstream way,
by any majority of the voters, whether it's his views on abortion, whether it's views on what happened on January 6th, on COVID.
Women and marriage.
Women and marriage. These are extreme, by definition, positions. That doesn't mean he's wrong to have them. Doesn't mean that he's wrong to say them. Doesn't mean. But they are not mainstream views, particularly in the UK. So I struggle to say. I do think that as we talk about the Overton window in politics, the kind of where acceptable politics is, I think it is shifting. I think it is changing, even in the UK. But right now, his particular brand of conservatism, I think, would still have a relatively small audience.